Okay, so today I'll do a quick tutorial on how to make a dress. I'm going to make this one. So this is a pattern 9379. It's a Birdie Kids pattern. You can make any of these views, so no sleeves, short sleeves with a belt, with a collar, long sleeves with or without a collar, so you can combine all these things together. So I'm going to make this one with the long sleeves primarily because that's what she's asked me to make, and I'm going to make it in this lovely shiny, slightly furry sort of velveteen material and black lace, because she wants it for dancing in. So it's going to be this one, white top with long sleeves, and then a black sort of lace skirt, which I may or may not line, and around the middle apparently it needs some elasticated sequins. So that's what I'm going to make. The back of the dress is closed with an invisible zip, so I'm going to put an invisible zip down centre back so that she can get in and out of it. Okay, so this is a straightforward multi-size pattern. Now I'm going to make view C, so I have to cut out all the pieces required to make view C, and you can tell which ones those are because it tells you which view the piece applies to. So the instructions for each pattern piece are on the pattern piece. So here's one I've started to cut out. So this is 3. This is going to be the front skirt panel. I need to cut one piece of material. I need to cut it on the fold. So this edge here has to go down the fold when I'm cutting. It tells you where the straight of grain is. So this is parallel to the self edge where the materials come off the loom. So this is cut on the cross. Okay. And these are all the different sizes. So these are ages because it's a child's pattern. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you cut around whichever one you want. Now, if I'm cutting for me, what I tend to do is trace the pattern first onto some pattern paper and then cut the pattern paper so the actual original pattern stays intact, and that way I can adjust the sizes. But for this one I'm just going to cut all the pattern pieces out. So I need a front and a back skirt, front and back bodice, and a sleeve pattern, and I'm not making this one with a collar, so I don't need to cut the collar out, but I might do, and then I can get rid of all the extra paper. So this is the lacy skirt material. Now I've folded it so that the edges are together. So this side is a fold. Now, because I'm making view C, I need to follow these instructions. So for skirts A and C, this edge goes down a fold. So this is going to be when it's opened out one large front panel. If I'm making skirt B for one of the other dresses, this whole piece needs to be rotated so that this line is parallel to the edge of the fabric, and it's got a centre front seam. So depending on which version of the pattern you're going to cut, make sure you follow the right instructions. So I'm following instructions for dress C. So I've laid out, this is my first pattern piece, this is the front, and I've also laid out the back. Now, because I have cut the back in the opposite direction to the front, so this is the bottom of the skirt, and this is the bottom of the skirt, and because this has a directional pattern, I've inverted the pattern. So this pattern's upside down, so that when I unfold everything and cut it out, the pattern will face in the same direction on both pieces. Okay, the alternative would be to turn this the right way up and move it right the way down here with the bottom of the dress here, but this is a more efficient use of fabric, so I've done it this way around. I've pinned this to the fabric. You can pin or you can use pattern weights. Sometimes if I'm cutting something quite easy, I just use my mobile phone and boxes of pins and stuff like that. This has the tendency to slip, so I'm pinning it. And the other thing I've done on this that I wouldn't normally do is this is the back centre seam. So this is where the zip's going to go into the back centre seam. So I've actually cut this right the way onto the edge of the material. Now normally you wouldn't cut the self edge this bit into your pattern because you wouldn't necessarily want that bit showing, you just want the lace, whereas this bit is actually going to be inside the zip, so it will make it much easier to stitch the zip in. So I've cut right to the edge of this material. So I've also now done my bodice pieces. So this is front bodice, this is on a fold, same as the skirt. So the front bodice comes out as one piece. Back bodice is in two pieces, two distinct pieces, left and right back, because the zip is going to go down the centre back seam. And this is the sleeve. So this is the head of the sleeve down to where the cuff will be. This line here and on the centre back are straight of grain lines, so they have to be equidistant from here to the top of the arrow, from here to the bottom of the arrow. They have to be equidistant, and that means that it's running straight down the fabric. Now this fabric has a right direction, so it's smooth in that direction and rough in that direction. So it's important that all the pieces are cut facing the same way so that they are smooth going down the fabric when the garment's assembled. So I'm now going to start to assemble this dress. So starting with the bodice. So this is front bodice, right side up. You can turn it right side up, okay? And then I've got my two back bodice pieces. Now I'm going to lay those onto the front, and I'm going to lay them on so that all the right sides are together. So the right sides are together, so it's effectively making it inside out, so that the seams end up obviously on the inside of your garment. So you lay them all together. I'm going to do the same on the other side. I'm going to match up the shoulder seams up here. So this will be a shoulder seam. And match those corners, match up that shoulder, and I'm going to match up these side seams here. Okay, these are going to be the armholes to insert the sleeves into. This will be the neckline, and this is going to be where we're going to put the zip. So I'm now going to pin these together and then stitch side seam, shoulder seam, shoulder seam at 5/8 of the way from the edge of the material, so a 5/8 seam. Okay, so we've stitched it together, so you should have something that looks like this. So shoulder seam, side seams. So turn it through, and you should now have front bodice, shoulders, armholes, side seam, back bodice ready to have the zip put in. Okay, so we're now going to do exactly the same with the skirt. So this is the front skirt piece, the two back skirt pieces. It's quite easy to tell right side from wrong side on this particular kind of lace, but right sides together. So we've got these two bits at the back where we're going to be able to put the zip in nice and easily, and we've pinned down the side seams from waistband to hem. I've switched the cotton in my machine to black, and I'm just going to stitch these together at the side seams. Okay, so that's stitched, so you should now have side seams. So you've got one big skirt piece like that, and the next thing to do is to join the skirt onto the bodice. Okay, so I'm attaching the skirt to the bodice. So this is the bodice right side up. This is the right side of the skirt. So I've put the right sides together and I've matched the back seams, the side seams across the back seam, and then I'm going to stitch right the way along here, stitching. So this will be the waist seam of the dress. Okay, so you should now have something that looks like this. So neck, armholes, the skirt's attached to the waistband, skirt, and then if you turn it over, the back is open all the way down the back seam from top right the way down to hem. Okay, and your inside seam looks like this. There we go. See, I've stitched it and then zigzagged it so that it's nice and neat and won't fray too badly. The next step is to put in the zip, and I'm going to do this as an invisible zip, and there's a tutorial on how to put an invisible zip in, and that's the way I'm going to do it this time. Okay, so I've put an invisible zip in, and I've also just put a stretchy band of sequins around the middle at the request of the widget. So this should now do up and look like that, and I've also stitched the back seam up to where the zip joins at the bottom. Okay, so that's the dress now pretty much assembled. The next thing to do is put the sleeves in. Okay, so I've put an invisible zip in, and I've also just put a stretchy band of sequins around the middle at the request of the widget. So this should now do up and look like that, and I've also stitched the back seam up to where the zip joins at the bottom. Okay, so that's the dress now pretty much assembled. The next thing to do is put the sleeves in. Okay, so now I'm going to finish off the neck edge with some bias binding. So I've got my bias binding and I've opened it and pinned it to the neck edge of the dress. I've trimmed about 2/8 of an inch off the neck edge so that it's not quite as tight when it's finished. I'm going to stitch along this crease and then turn the whole thing to the inside. Okay, so I've now got a line of stitching that's there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some V's all the way along here, and that makes it less bulky when you turn it over, and then I'm going to turn it up and over so that it lies flat on the inside. Okay, so I've turned my bias binding to the inside and then top stitched just around about 2/8 of an inch, just under around the top. So I've turned it to the inside and then just stitched it round so it's lying nice and flat on the inside. It gives you a nice clean neck edge, and then all we need to do now is put the sleeves in and hem the bottom, and we're all done. So to make the sleeves, the first thing I've done is I've transferred these marks here onto the back of my material. So that's the first sleeve and that's the second sleeve, and these are tailor's marks. So the next instruction on the pattern is that I have to stitch 2 rows of stitching from here to here, and those will form the gather that pulls the head of the sleeve into the top of the armhole on the dress. Okay, so put a line of stitching from here to here. Those are the marks that were on the pattern, and that's going to gather to get the sleeve to fit into the top of the dress. And then what I've done is I've hemmed the bottom of the sleeve with a rolled hem, and then turned the sleeves right sides together and stitched from the cuff to the bottom of the armhole. I'm just going to do the same on the other side, and that will give me my 2 sleeves. Now, what I might do, if I've got enough sequins, is put a row of sequins around the bottom of the cuff, but I'm not sure yet. But you'll get something like this. And then the next step is to fit this sleeve head into the arm scry or the armhole of the bodice. Okay, so we're going to put the sleeve into the dress, and this is the bane of most dressmaking. So I tend to make stuff without sleeves. So you've got your sleeve that you've stitched. So this is the underarm seam, and this has to join up with the underarm seam, the side seam of the bodice. So it's going to come down here like that. And this is the sleeve head. Okay, and on the pattern, when I cut the pattern, I've notched the mark at the top of the seam. So that's going to match with the shoulder seam. So that gets it in straight. And on the front seam, there is also a mark on the pattern, both on the bodice and on the sleeve. So I've notched, you see there, I've notched that as well. So there's a notch here and a notch on the arm scry of the bodice, and they will also need to match up. So dress is inside out. Put sleeves right side out. Put the sleeve inside. So it's as if you've turned the dress inside out. Okay, so feed the dress down the arm, feed the sleeve down inside. Okay, so you've got the right side of the sleeve to the right side of the bodice. Okay, and then the first, so you've got something right now that looks like this. Okay, so you've shoved the sleeve down the inside, wrong side of the bodice, and you're working down into the sleeve. Okay, so first of all, you need to match up the notch at the top with the shoulder seam. So those match there. And then we're going to pin that in place. So I've pinned the notch at the top of the armhole to the seam there, and I'm going to do the same at the bottom. So I'm going to get the underarm, the side seam of the sleeve, yeah, and match it here with the underarm seam of the bodice, okay, like that. Okay, and I'm going to pin that in place. Okay, so you should now have something that looks like this. This is looking down into the sleeve. Okay, so pins at the top, and then pins to the side seam, and I've pinned on either side going round. Okay, and now you can see that you've got way too much material in the head of the sleeve to fit into the arm scry, and that's why you've got this gather line that you put in earlier. So you're going to pull the gather line and then even out the gather around so it's even across the top of the sleeve, and pin this sleeve all the way around. So you end up with something that looks like this. So that's looking down into the sleeve, and it's pinned from the sleeve side, right sides together, all the way around, and it's gathered gently, fitting it in, easing between your fingers. I'm then going to put it onto the machine. So it's like that, going through the machine, and do a 5/8 seam all the way around. Okay, so you should now have something that looks like that, with the sleeve located in the side of the bodice and all your seams lining up underneath. So all we've got to do now is put a rolled hem around the bottom and try it on, and then we're done. And so we're all finished. What do you think, Ella?
I love it!
Go on, show me. Are you happy?
Yep.
Yeah? Thumbs up.